What's up, team? I just recorded my staff video update and it was like 9 minutes long, and so hopefully I can do this in a much shorter amount of time. Obviously, this past week has been a lot. A lot's, I mean, it's an understatement. And if you've been on social media, you've seen all of the dialogue. Like, if your church didn't mention Charlie Kirk, you should leave. And I left my church because they mentioned Charlie Kirk. And so, there's a whole lot of conversation, a lot of chatter on both sides. And here's what I think is pretty cool. And I don't know how long of a window we will have. And I want to make sure that we are clear about how we are navigating this window. The reality is, among my friends, and even I think at Cedar Creek, there were a bunch of people who went to church for the first time or for the first time in a long time this past weekend. And I'm going to oversimplify it, but they were in probably two groups. It reminded me of the weekend after September 11th, except some people were coming for Charlie's sake. And they probably wanted to hear or remember or honor Charlie, which for people who loved him, I can understand that. Charlie was outspoken about his faith and pointed people to Jesus in the midst of the debates and the conservative values that he talked about. But I think there was another large group of people who came to church to get some of what Charlie had. And so our mission is to, wherever someone is at around Charlie Kirk, is to keep pointing them to Jesus. In fact, I think if Charlie were to come back today and send a video to all of us, I think that's what he would ask us to do. I think if Jesus were here today, I think that's what Jesus would ask us to do. And I think the word that I felt like God gave me to speak to was to help our church think critically about the thoughts that they're having and taking every thought captive and making it obedient to Christ. Because if I'm not careful, I'll get caught up in the thoughts of everybody else that I'm seeing on social media and my own thoughts and feelings. And that can be pretty counterproductive and lead me to a lot of unhealthy places. And when I come back to what is it that's going to get us out of this mess? The gospel will. Who is in control? Jesus is. What is our mission? To introduce people to Jesus and the life-changing adventure with him. Like, that's ultimately what's going to lead to better schools, better families, better future, better hope. And so I don't want you to miss that. And we are going to continue to boldly profess and proclaim and point people to the gospel message of Jesus as the way out of this chaos and this evil that we find ourselves in. And no, we're not going to give voice to every issue that comes along. And we're not going to name every name. And we're going to miss things. But last weekend, what happened last week was big enough that we needed to give voice to that. Which leads me to point number two. Afterwards, you see what all the other pastors do, and I start comparing what I did with them, and I think to myself, man, I start second guessing because they did awesome. I wish I would have had their script. I could have used some of those things, and so if people are wondering why didn't Ben do this? And don't worry, I'm second guessing all the little things, but I feel like the heart of my message, I would have kept the same. Let's take every thought captive and make it obedient to Christ. When you stand up in front of people and deliver a message like that, it can be challenging. So thanks for praying for me, and thanks for leaning into the mission. We got an awesome opportunity. I don't know how long the window will be open, but let's seize it for the Great Commission and for the glory of God. And I'm thankful to be on that journey with you. Which reminds me to the second thing that I want to share with you. This weekend, I'll be talking about forgiveness. This weekend, we also have the Garmin Half Marathon, which is a big deal for runners. It'll impact probably our weekend to some degree. But next weekend, we're going to open the service with a Sabrina Carpenter song. If you know Sabrina Carpenter, you know her songs. If you don't know Sabrina Carpenter, a good portion of our church won't either, until a friend or a neighbor or a coworker or somebody else says, I can't believe you play that song at church. And then somebody's going to look up Sabrina Carpenter's new album and look at some of her songs. And they're going to be like, why are you endorsing her? And this comes up often. I mean, it's been a constant question throughout the history of our church. Our halftime shows at Preach Off, and when we would do AC/DC and, all of this. And there are two principles that I don't want you to miss. Non-Christian songs speak to the real issues of life, the honest issues of life, in a way that typically Christian songs don't. non-Christian songs ask questions or speak honestly about the challenges that we face. Christian songs speak about the answer. That's why it's positive and encouraging K-Love, because God helped us, God saved us, God is the fix, like to the things, the stuff in our life. That's great. And I think what's helpful, especially at the start of a service or in the midst of where people are meeting us, is when you can find a popular voice who's speaking honestly about relationships or life or a challenge that we're facing. That's why we pick those songs. And so her song, Please, 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 that we're going to play was her #1 hit last year. And yes, there is a swear word in it. No, we are not singing it. But the lyrics of the song just speak to some of the tensions that we find ourselves in, especially in a one-sided relationship. And we want to leverage that voice to help people see that God can handle your honesty. In fact, God prefers your honesty, because far too many people feel like you got to get your life cleaned up first before God will approve you or do anything in your life. And that's just not biblical. That is not the gospel. We come honestly to God, mess and all, because he's the one that can change us. And so I love when we can leverage those songs, yes, to have some fun. We're not trying to be hip per se, but we are trying to use popular voices that are speaking honestly about life's issues, because I think God loves it when we're honest with him. And so if somebody comes up to you this weekend, we don't need to convince them to love the song, but you have an opportunity to cast vision around, we want to be the kind of church, we're willing to take risks in our service to help open people's hearts and minds to the fact that you can come honestly to God, even when life is a mess, even when it's difficult. He can handle it. He'll meet us there. It's okay to not be okay, and we have hope because he doesn't want us to stay that way. And so that's why we do the things that we do. It's not just because we're trying to be edgy or like the cool kids, okay? Hopefully that helps equip you for potentially some of the lobby conversations that you may have. It's why we do At the Movies. It's why we do Hallow Weekend. And it doesn't, I always tell people, I don't need it to be your favorite, but I don't want you to miss the reason or the purpose behind it. And usually when they see that, it helps them come around. So, saved a couple minutes. There's your staff video update. Appreciate you guys. Have a great week. Enjoy this weather while it lasts.